Pulp MX Network production.
Bringing you a cheeky Brit and an American YouTube racing sensation weekly. It's the LVK More Than Moto podcast with your hosts, Phillips and Kellen Brauer.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Leatt LVK More Than Moto podcast. I am Kellen Brauer, and I am pleased and proud and so excited to be welcomed back by the man, the myth, the legend. Phillips is joining us again. It's been a long hiatus, but I'm glad to see you're alive. You're in good health, mostly, and you're here to talk moto with us again.
Last LVK I did was after Hangtown, which was quite a while ago when you think about it. Like, Hangtown isn't exactly recent. But yeah, I'm back. The 2% of fans that missed me will be overjoyed. The 98% that very much enjoyed the last two LVKs will be distraught. But hey, that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
I heard a lot of murmurings, not just from people within the pits, but even just like fans I ran into the last couple of weeks that said they really missed you. So feel higher up than the 98%, sir.
Okay, well, that's 4% of people that missed me. No, we're back. We're back.
Yeah, very hectic couple of weeks for you. I know you already talked about it on the Vital MXGP podcast, but just tell the people what the last few weeks have looked like for you. We kind of highlighted it a little bit, but tell us from within.
Okay, rapid report of where I was. So Thunder Valley, for some reason, I was struggling to talk, and I couldn't really figure out why. It was like I couldn't say more than a couple of words without having to really, like, breathe. And that was odd, but I didn't really think much of it other than I was like, oh, I'm getting a bit sick. And then Sunday night, I couldn't talk at all. I basically lost my voice. So I thought I had just lost my voice. Monday, I went to urgent care. They said I had strep throat, and that was why, which I've never had before, but, you know, it's fairly routine. So they gave me antibiotics and said, within 2 days, you'll feel a lot better. 2 days later, I woke up and genuinely couldn't breathe. Like, I was choking on saliva. Like I could just feel like saliva sat in the bottom of my mouth where it had nowhere to go. Like, it was just collecting, which was concerning. But I didn't really think much of it, to be honest. I was just like, oh, my throat's worse. So I went back to urgent care and said, you told me I'd be better in 2 days, and I'm significantly worse. And they looked at me for about 30 seconds, and then they said, okay, we're going to call you an ambulance. And I was like, huh? And they were like, yeah, you need to go, like, right now. Like, we can't help you, but you need to go right now. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, actually, no. I forget the part of the story where at this point, I wasn't saying, oh, okay, because I couldn't talk. So I was communicating through the notes app on my phone. So I was like, I've still got my first note of when I went in, and I went, and like, it's like a full phone screen of I was here on Monday, and you told me I'd be a lot better by Wednesday, but here I am, and I can't actually talk, whereas I could talk on Monday. And yeah, they basically what happened is somehow it was nothing to do with a strep, or it was something to do with a strep, or a lot was happening at once, and my uvula, the little dangly thing I think that is in your throat,
Yep.
had been moved by like swelling in my mouth and stuff, had been moved into my airway and was basically blocking my airway. And they said I was breathing through a gap that was the size of like a pin of a pencil, or like the point of a pencil. They said like that's why I couldn't talk, and I was literally breathing through like the smallest gap. And they said the reason they wanted me in an ambulance and to get to ER as quickly as possible is they said if in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 minutes that the uvula moves a centimeter more, then I'll choke and die. They actually said to me when I got to ER, at one point after all of the trauma stuff, they said to me, they went, thank you for coming in before it was too late for you. And I was like, oh, fuck, that sounds quite serious. Obviously, I was alone at this point because I'm here. And yeah, then I spent 4 days in ICU because they were very concerned that in the night, my uvula would move, as I just said, and like halfway through the night, I would choke to death. So I had eyes on me all through the night, but it didn't really matter because I didn't sleep at all because it was incredibly uncomfortable and the worst couple of nights sleep I've ever had in my life. I think I slept like 7 hours over like 8 days, I worked out, mainly because I couldn't breathe, which really makes it difficult to sleep. But yeah, and here I am.
I feel like you're so nonchalant about this, and even while it was happening, you were like, you really were not like overly concerned about all this, because I feel like I would have been freaking out, man.
Kellen, I've been through enough in my life where I couldn't give a fuck at this point.
Okay.
It's just another chapter. Literally, like I've still got some. I'm meant to be. I think I'm meant to be better now. No, I'm meant to be better than I am now. Like I should be much further along in the recovery, but fucking, who gives a fuck? Like,
Yeah.
it's just the way it goes. Then my bank got hacked.
What? Really? I didn't know this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, just chapters. Yeah, my bank got hacked, so someone in Arkansas somehow spent $2,000 in Walmart. So congrats to them. Hope they enjoyed the money of Lewis. And yeah, so
Goodness, man. Yeah, you've been through the ringer.
yes, no, I mean the nurses were very nice in ICU. I had a great time with them. They were very nice. Yeah, we had great laughs. I was taking a piss. There was a really horrible doctor who I was very adamant I didn't want to see. So anytime the nurse came in and went, the doctor will be round soon. And I went, don't make sure it's not that dickhead. And they were like, yeah, we don't really like him either.
Yeah. Gosh, that's crazy, man. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Like I said, it was a scary time. A lot of us were really concerned for you, but you made it through the other side, mostly okay. So,
but I was high on meds though. Fucking it, they gave me a lot of shit. And
yeah,
I didn't realize until after the fact. Like a couple of days after I left, I was like, I was on a lot of shit.
Well, what I love is, and if you listen to the Vital MXGP podcast, is that you and Wheeler bantering back and forth about this, and he says, "Oh, I was concerned about these photos that you were posting," and then you're like, "I didn't even know I was posting photos. I don't remember any of this."
Yeah, on like the second day they started giving me fentanyl, but I think they might have given me too much because when they swapped nurses, I think maybe there was a bit of confusion about when I last had my dose because there was a point on like the Thursday where I genuinely didn't. I was so like in and out, and I had no idea what was going on. But
yeah, well,
hey, as I said, for the 2%, 3%, 4% of people that care and want me on this podcast, I'm here.
You're here,
So,
and
rejoice.
we're very glad you're here. Before we get into our topics and everything like that, I do want to just quickly, mention this because it's a tragic thing that's happened in the motocross community. Aiden Zing, the Team Green Monster Energy Kawasaki rider, lost his life on Saturday at Mammoth this past weekend, and the circumstances around it sound just really sad and terrible, and I feel, horrible for the family. And, we're not going to get into it too much or anything like that, but obviously just, thinking about the Zing family right now, obviously all his friends and everything like that. I know the Kiefers were really, really close to them, and Chris and Aiden and Heather just put out a podcast actually yesterday where they detailed their experience of what they saw, because Aiden was in the race when it happened. Aiden Kiefer was in the race when Aiden Zing passed away. And it's heavy. It's a really sad thing that has happened, and we mourn the loss of him and definitely feel for his family. I don't know when you heard about it or what, but when we heard about it at Southwick, man, it took the wind out of their sails for a lot of people there.
Yeah, and obviously when anyone passes away, there's always going to be a lot of tributes and memories shared and stuff. But I think the amount of people in the industry who have shared this with a personal anecdote about what a great person he is speaks volumes. I feel like each tribute isn't so much just a generic tribute, but something personal where Aiden Zing really touched their lives, which I think says a lot more about him than just amateur prospect. Says a lot more about who he was as a person.
Yeah, and I didn't really have much personal connection with him either, but the few times I had said hello, he was a super, super nice kid, and the family was awesome. So, tough time for the sport. Going to be a tough week, I think, for a lot of people to kind of heal and get over this and get ready for Redbud. But we're going to try to do our best, and we're going to go ahead and continue on with our show here today and try to talk about everything that just happened at Southwick and more. So let's get into it, shall we? Again, big thanks to Leatt, Racetech, Namura, Partzilla for their continued backing of our show. We'll tell you guys more about them as we go along. And if it's your first time joining us on the LVK More Than Moto podcast, basically what we do is Lewis and I each have 3 topics, and we're going to pitch them to each other. We're going to banter about them, and we'll send you guys on your way once we're done with that. So I'm going to lead off with my topics. And my first topic really is this, Lewis. I feel like we're getting to the point now where what Jett Lawrence is doing is, as weird as this may sound, given the credit that he's always gotten over his career, but I almost don't think it's getting enough credit at this point. The way in which he's winning these races, the talent that he's been able to go through to do it, both with Chase Sexton in his perfect season and now Eli Tomac and his brother, and it's insane what he's doing. And I think it really is not given, I guess, like the fine tooth comb that it kind of deserves, because now he's tied James Stewart, 20 career outdoor 450 motocross wins. He's gotten there in only 21 tries, which is insane to still look at that record. And this past weekend at Southwick is maybe just another example of the level that he's on compared to the rest, because, yeah, he hole shot both motos, but dude, he put gaps so fast on everybody else on the track. I couldn't even believe it standing trackside. Like, we're watching greatness in a level that we haven't seen maybe since Carmichael. And it's impressive. So I think that we just kind of need to riff about that a little bit, of what he's doing and how insane it is.
Yeah, I fully agree with every single aspect of what you said, and I too have wondered why it doesn't maybe seem so amazing, or it isn't so striking. I don't know I don't even really know how you'd quantify that. All I can come up with is because he starts from the front so often, it is very much routine. So that, like, if he was coming from 7th and then 14th and then 3rd, there would be a little more variance in the way in which he's winning, which would then maybe give us more to talk about, give fans more to be excited about. But it's so routine, so packaged so perfectly, that there's no reason to doubt him, and then therefore there's no reason to celebrate him. If that makes sense? Well, I'm not talking personally, I'm just talking, I think that's general, because I do struggle with analysing Jett even, because I don't know what to say. Because he's an amazing starter, he's an amazing rider, there's no weakness. So how do you analyse him? Because in order to analyse someone, you almost need to find the strength and the weakness to, again, rift those two off of each other and really understand what the rider brings to the table. But what Jett brings to the table is just perfection. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, what more do you say beyond that? There isn't much.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I wanted to get at, is because, and I talked to a couple of photographers on the infield about it this weekend, in living this in the moment. And I do feel like I remember this about the Carmichael days. And I mean, we've had many guys that have dominated to a certain degree, but maybe not as much as this. But living in the moment, you are trying to, in a way, find that weakness. Whereas Carmichael would, yes, sometimes have a bad start or a crash and have to come through the field, and it'd be insane to watch him do it. And we just don't see that with Jett. But also on the same vein, I do think that we're also living in a moment in time in this sport where 20 years down the road, we're going to look back and be like, dude, remember Jett Lawrence doing this every week? Like, that just doesn't happen, and probably will not continue to happen beyond him. Now, Hayden Deegan moving up to the 450 class, of course, everybody's talking about how that's going to go. But as we're living this in the moment, Jett Lawrence is on just a different planet. And it's been, like I said, since at least Carmichael, that I feel like I can go to the race every weekend and kind of expect the result and not really feel like I'm going to be turned one way or the other unless something dramatically different happens,
Yeah, that is exactly where it's at. And it shouldn't be in this position, especially currently, because he's still only 5 races off a torn ACL. Yes, there would have been progress since round 1, but I think that we've learned a lot in the past that it takes more than 5 races for a rider to get back to their best. So I would argue there's still even more to come than this, which means that there will only be more emphasis placed on how perfect he is. It's his stat sheet is just phenomenal. Like, yes, he lost the overall at Hangtown last year. That's it. And he's lost 6 motos in his 450 career, and only 2 of those have been off the podium. It's ridiculous. He's qualified in the top 2 in every single 450 race he's done, except for 1. And he's only not qualified on pole 5 times, 4 of those being second places. He started in first at the end of lap 1 in 29 of 42 motos. Like, it's just all numbers that can't be surpassed by anyone. And all I keep coming back to is, and there's some sort of saying about this, how it's in the imperfections that you find the beauty of something. So then how do you do that with Jett when there is no imperfection? I don't know.
I don't know. Like, the only moment of weakness, I guess, that we've seen so far is his start in High Point Moto 2. Because I feel like his 3rd at Hangtown was the most measured approach I've seen him take to all this so far, which is like, I just don't have it. I'm a little tired. It's hot. I'll take a third. And then he stomped everybody in the second moto. But high point was, didn't have the start. It took him a second to get the ball rolling, but as soon as he did, he was on a roll. I mean, who knows? He wasn't going to close up to Hunter and Eli, but he was blowing by guys at a certain point. So I think I'm just kind of, at this point, kind of blown away that it keeps getting better. Like there's no slowing down. And this Southwick ride was even more so an example of what he's able to do because, and I know we see gaps at sand races, like it's probably more often than not at a sand race, you're going to see bigger gaps open up. But dude, like 3 laps in, he was 10 up in the first moto. Like he just was gone. I couldn't believe it. I would shoot him and then it would be like, okay, where's Hunter? Where are they? Like, what's going on? He's just putting so much time into these guys, and it seems like he could go somehow maybe even faster than that. Like, it looked like he wasn't that, overexerting himself at all this weekend, and it's impressive.
Yeah, and also there has to be credit to everyone around him because obviously they've built a structure in which that Jett can thrive, and I mean, even in his demeanor, you can see that he's very comfortable, very settled, very stable in his surroundings. There isn't much playing on his mind. Also need to give credit to Jett and the Lawrence family for inserting themselves into that because it's very easy to be standoffish and then you don't get the most out of that relationship. But they've obviously invested in HRC as much as HRC have invested in them. So there is a bigger picture there beyond Jett, of course, and everyone plays their role. But to loop all the way back around, I do still think he's going to get better. I don't know how anyone's going to beat him, and I don't really know what conversation there is to have about 450 motocross because for the foreseeable, I think we're going to be heading in this very clear direction.
Well, your buddy's back this coming weekend.
Tony?
As are you, Tony. Well, we'll get into that in a sec, but I mean, if there's a man that could get in there and at least has given Jett a little bit harder of a challenge in 450 motocross, it's been Chase Sexton. Now, is he going to be the Chase Sexton we saw last year? Probably not, coming off of this hiatus, but I mean, I guess that's the light at the end of the tunnel, that maybe something gets kerfuffled a little bit with him being back on the track.
Well, is Chase more of a light at the end of the tunnel for you than Tomac is?
At this point, yeah, because I mean, I thought Tomac's second moto, as soon as Prado crashed, I was like, okay, here we go. Like, he's at that point 8 or 9 seconds behind Jett, so probably not going to catch him, but he's got second place all to himself, and then Hunter ran him down. So I'm not really there anymore,
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think it's going to be tough for a lot of fans to hear, and a lot of people won't agree with it, but we have 10 motos, and the sample size tells us that Eli is closer to the chasing pack than he is to Jett. And yes, there are factors that contribute to that, such as poor starts, but that's part of the game. Yeah. And although you could maybe dismiss Jett's success by saying, oh, well, he just starts out front all the time, so what do you expect? That is a part of his skill set, and maybe his greatest tool is the fact that he is that good out of the gate. And every other rider who he races against would kill for that ability. So you've got to give him credit there as well. It's not clearly the amount that Jett has started at the front, it's more than just luck, and vice versa. The amount that Eli has had to come from behind, it's more than just luck. So there's something there to skill and testing and technique and everything that Jett has over Eli, and it's a crucial part of the race.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Jett's just incredible. He really is.
Speaking of starts, did you see my stat that I tweeted?
No, I missed it.
Well, it's quite striking, I felt, and actually very relevant to this. So in 198 450 moto starts, Eli has led at the end of lap 1 19 times. Okay? In 42 starts, Jett has led at the end of lap 1 29 times. If that doesn't...
How many times this year has Jett done that?
If that doesn't put a bow on this whole situation, then I don't know what does. Jett has done it in 7 of 10 motos.
7 of 10 motos. Okay, thank you. That I would just like to pick up that sample size and then drop it in front of Hunter Lawrence, who did not like my question in the press conference this weekend. But that's
what was your question to Hunter?
Well, I was
how were you in the press conference? You were doing interviews.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be the good journalist here and do both. But I was there for the 450 press conference, and I asked Hunter, like you train with Jett every week and you talk about his strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that, but he's getting you on the starts. So what are you noticing? And is this happening during the week when you guys are testing at home? And he was kind of like, well, he's not getting me on the starts all the time. I was getting him in the first 3-4 motos of the year, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I don't know, man.
Obviously, we don't have data for out of turn 1, so I'm looking purely at the end of lap 1. But
I get it, but
at the end of, I mean, you could easily go back through replays and write down if Hunter is actually ahead of Jett. But Hunter hasn't led at the end of lap 1 at all this year. In fact, he's only been top 2 at the end of lap 1 3 times out of 10. But he has been top 5 at the end of lap 1 every single time.
Yeah,
so maybe
I mean, his starts are good. I'm just trying to, trying to get him to compare, particularly during the week when they test starts. What's the difference? Like, are they close? Is Jett beating him as often as he is on the real starts? Like, but he kind of disregarded it a little bit, but that's okay. What you shouldn't disregard, Lewis, is you should not disregard what Leatt brings to the table, because at Leatt Protection is in our brand DNA, and it started 20 years ago with groundbreaking Leatt neck brace and continues with an extensive product offering of protective gear and riding apparel. But what Leatt really stands for is inspiring confidence and ensuring safety with every ride. And we thank Leatt for continuing to support the show and supporting Benoit Paturel to a 14-14 result here at Southwick. Not a sand specialist, Mr. Benoit Paturel, correct?
Yes, far from it. But you know who was technically, well, maybe not results-wise, but the standout Leatt performer this time around?
Well, Cornelius Tondel.
Yeah, in his Leatt helmet.
Yep, Leatt helmet. All the way to P3 in qualifying and 11th in the first moto. He looked tired, man.
Well, it's to be expected, I guess.
I think if he had the fitness, he finishes like 6th in the first moto, because he was making Anderson work for it to pass him, and then just fell off the face of the cliff. So, and
again, Cornelius Tundel is not getting top 6 in an MXGP moto, no matter how sandy the conditions are.
In MXGP, everybody else over there that he's going against is also ungodly talented.
No, but my point being that it really shines a light, as does Harrop's second moto, as does whatever else, really shines a light on the sand experience, pays off in quite a big way.
It does, yeah. But it's cool to see him up there. And I guess he's racing Redbud. Do you know how many he's in for?
Yeah, Redbud and Millville.
So 3? Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll see him again this weekend then. But now he'll probably be an A.
Yes.
All right, let's get into my second topic here of the day. And kind of continuing on with the dominance of Jett, we can kind of just briefly talk about the dominance of Deegan. It's incredible what he's doing too. No question about it. We've already kind of hashed it out. Cade myself did a lot the last couple of weeks on the show. But what I actually want to talk about the 250 class is, as much as the 450 class doesn't have a whole lot going on in this battle for second in the championship, I feel like the 250 class kind of does, because Vial and Kitchen are starting to really hit their stride. And obviously Shimoda crashed in the first turn, so that's what really hurt him this weekend. But I almost feel like we're starting to see a bit of a toss-up in this battle for second. And I'm curious if you have a favorite of those 3 that's bubbling to the front in the next 6 rounds, and why?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I could pick one, but I don't think I look at this battle as positively as you, because to me, what Deegan is doing shines a very negative light on these riders, because hitting their stride they may be, but they're still nowhere near Deegan, and I think that each of them should be closer. So I almost feel like they're fighting over meaningless scraps until they can have more of an impact on Deegan, because none of those riders are going to be like stoked on second, with a gap, a deficit as big as this. It's been up and down, of course. Vial's caught fire, Kitchen's been consistent. The underrated pick, I still kind of like Joe, maybe because of the points advantage he has at the moment. I mean, that gives him a bit of wiggle room. And overall, you look at Joe's outdoor career and he is underrated. Like, he's been very solid over the years. Maybe less so recently. The end of 2021 and the beginning of, and the whole of 2022, he was, of course, at his best. We're a little bit removed from that. But he's more of a factor than I think people give him credit for, even after the way he started this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of proven that this is the position he's going to stay in at this point. And it's just a question of whether or not he has any more kind of moments like he did with a crash in turn 1 this weekend. Like I said, I don't think that was really all that bad, because he got all the way back to 10th and he was hauling to get there. But I think that there's tracks that, like, Kitchen's going to be better than Joe, I think, probably the next few weeks. I don't know, because Joe's good at some of these tracks too, but I think Kitchen's coming around to be better at some of these rounds. And
I don't know. Kitchen's been third 4 weeks in a row though. Like it's just kind of,
well, but I'm saying obviously Washougal home race, I disregard that, but I think he's better than Joe at Redbud and Millville, and I think that's going to play into his advantage. I think Vial's kind of just like, it's almost like we're trying to move like a heavy stone in a positive direction, because he seems to be solid again, but not flashy solid, except for maybe first moto this weekend. That was really good, the charge through the field. I just don't at any point look at Vial anymore and I'm like, oh, he's coming or he's going really fast. None of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel so numb to his pro motocross career because I don't really know what to expect now. I don't know what to celebrate. I don't know what to criticize. I don't know where he should be. I certainly think he should be closer to Deegan, not beating him perhaps, but closer. So yes, the first moto was incredible, one of his better American rides, but on the whole, I still feel a little bit deflated on what Vial's doing and feel like should be more there. But maybe all of this is just a testament to Deegan and a testament to how amazing he is. And maybe Leatt Kitchen and Shimoda are at their very best and doing all they can, and they're just powerless to stop Deegan. I think that, similar to the Jett conversation, I think with each week that passes, we're accepting that as reality.
That's kind of why I'm curious about this, because yes, I give Deegan a ton of credit for what he's doing, and I give him more credit than I give the opposite side, which is like, I don't think Vial and Kitchen and those guys are doing the job. I think they're actually doing better than maybe you think, because like Vial getting third in the second moto this weekend, yeah, he got obliterated by Shimoda going faster, but he was still 30 plus seconds better than fifth on back, which like 250 class 6 years ago, 30 seconds better than P5, you're probably winning by a good margin. That's how much more competitive it used to be. Deegan's just laying claim to the field, though.
I would agree with that if it was a normal race, but I think that's more representative of the fact that Southwick, a lot of guys don't know how to pace themselves and don't really know how to handle a second moto in conditions like that. I mean, look at Harrop. He made 4 moves in the last 3 laps. And not by his own admission, not because he was flying, but because guys just were falling by the wayside and didn't really know what to do with themselves. Yeah. So I don't think you're seeing that gap elsewhere. And again, yeah, I do think that maybe there is a chance that Leatt Kitchen and Shimoda are a million times better than they're getting credit for. But you could also say the same about Wyndham, Reed, and others in the Carmichael era. So is that where we're at? I don't know. Both classes, it's odd. It's odd to have both classes in this situation. I don't like it. It'd be nice to have at least one class that was wide open. But yeah, this is a reality. And I mean, similar to Jett, Deegan's now ending lap 1 first more often than not. So it's just the full package. And I don't know what the others will do to stop him.
Well, as many people have said this week, it feels a lot like 04, Carmichael's perfect season, and Stu dominating in the 125 class back then too, and it kind of looks the same.
Both classes combined, we have 24 motos left? 6 rounds? 4 motos a round?
Oh, yeah, like all together, yeah.
Yeah. How many motos did Jett and Deegan lose together? Like, how many motos do we have a different winner? 4?
That might be controversial, but I don't know if any.
I kind of wanted to say that, but I don't want to admit that I'd like at least one different moto winner at some point.
Yeah, I'll give it a class. They lose 2 motos collectively.
Yeah, I think I went a bit high with 4. I wanted to say 3 to begin with. That seems acceptable. I'll go 3.
How early do they both wrap up?
Oh, like next week.
Next week?
Honestly, the championships are so done, they may as well just hand out number 1 plates now.
So Deegan is 58 points and 38 for Jett.
Which is
Deegan's definitely going to do 2 rounds early for sure, right?
Yes. I mean, that might be close, but yes.
Well, 2 rounds. I mean, he's got 4 rounds to do it 2 rounds early.
Yes.
Basically.
So he has to put 40 points on Shimoda in 4 rounds, which isn't impossible, but it's a bit.
He's put 58 on him in 5. So
yeah, that's true. And also, with the Jett Deegan beef at the moment, a nice nod that Jett has a 38-point lead.
I didn't even think of that. That's funny. Good note there. All right, let me tell you guys about Racetech. For 40 years, Racetech has been supplying the motorcycle industry with high-quality suspension components made right here in the USA. For modern to vintage, Racetech is your go-to source for suspension performance. And again, we thank Racetech so much for supporting the show. A lot of Racetech riders out there ripping the deep sands of Southwick, looking good on their Racetech suspension. And we get to see how they do at Redbud this coming weekend. Speaking of Redbud this coming weekend, we do have a familiar, friendly, but new face joining us in Antonio Cairoli on his Ducati. And I was curious about your thoughts on this because I just listened on my flight back yesterday to the fantasy podcast before Southwick. And I don't know if you listened to it, the Pulp Fantasy podcast. But there was a rather large disagreement in placement between Steve and Dan and Paul about where Cairoli is going to finish at Redbud or Millville. And for those that didn't listen, Steve thinks Cairoli is going to be more the 10 to 12 range. Dan and Paul were like 15 on back for sure, maybe 18 to 22. So I just want to know where Big Lou thinks that someone who he's watched his entire life and also just watched finish 7th at the British GP 2 weeks ago is going to finish at Redbud.
I'm more on track with Steve, but just a titch off. 11-14 in the motos, I think, is a respectable score. 7-8 at Matterley was amazing and much better than his other MXGP wildcards on the Ducati, helped by the fact it was his favourite track. The prep wasn't ideal, so starts were very important. There were no passes, essentially. So other riders were saying if Tony had started 12th, he would have finished 12th. If it started 15th, he would have finished 15th. And likewise, if another rider had started 7th, they would have got 7th. Also, it was so hard-baked that people have said like that helped with his lack of fitness and whatnot. So I think that the 7-8 at Matterley is the very top end of what to expect when everything is in his corner. Naturally, Redbud, a completely different championship and whatnot. And also, as with Prado, as with everyone else, the lack of time in the morning will hurt to a degree with setting up the bike and getting comfortable. I don't think he's top 10. I think he's 11-14. I really feel nice about an 11-14 scorecard. Ahead of Patrell and Guido in one moto, but behind them in the next. That seems realistic. 19 is far too far down. I mean, there's no way that Cairoli gets beaten by Derek Kelly or Bryce Shelley or anyone similar to that. There's just no way. Of course, there is a caveat that he doesn't need to finish the motos. And as we have seen Cairoli do many times in his career in these sort of situations, maybe something happens and with 10 minutes to go, he pulls off and just says, yeah, we got all the data we needed. Like that also could happen. But if he's full gas for the entire time, I like 11-14, 14-11.
Yeah, so actually, that's kind of want to bring this up too, because so this is the debut of the Ducati in the USA. How much, if at all, is there pressure on Cairoli to like show it off in a good light? You know what I mean? Like to not only make an impression for what he's capable of still, I guess, but what the Ducati is capable of on American soil. Like if he goes out and is just meandering around in 20th and then pulls off, like that's not necessarily a great look, right? So there's kind of a little bit more weight to this, no?
I don't know, because equally, it is a R&D project, and he has already been telling everyone that he's going to be racing with a very stock bike, and it's all about showcasing the production potential of the machine rather than testing for Barsha next year or whatever else. So, I don't know. I think that if it was solely based on we need to get a top 10 to sell Ducatis, I almost don't know if they'd be doing it. Because that's too risky, isn't it? A novelty of having Cairoli on track, gathering data and whatnot. I think it's more of a marketing-wise, rather than a short-term win, which can be quantified by numbers. I feel like it's more of an experience play where you're just trying to make people feel something and attach to the project, rather than trying to prove something with cold hard numbers.
I agree. And it should be looked at like that. But why I think that this could be maybe misconstrued, especially when it comes to how his result actually ends up, is, Ducati's actually actively searching to get riders for 2026 right now. And as we've seen with the Prado situation and the discussion that's going on with his Kawasaki not really pulling him to the results that he feels like he's capable of, how quickly this paddock and the fan base and everything turns the second something doesn't go like perfect. And so that's why I'm curious if in GPs he can go over there and do that as like a project. You know what I mean? But here, less so, I feel like, because they are trying to pull in riders. Like, they are trying to land the services of a top guy next year. And if he goes out there and actively looks like he's struggling all day, don't you think that immediately gets some of those guys a little bit concerned?
No, if it was Sewer, then I think maybe more so, because people would be more confused about what he should be doing. There would be more like, is this good? Should he be top 5? Should he be top 10? There would be more confusion about where he fits in. Whereas Cairoli's story is so well known, I think everyone is like, well, he's 39 years old, he's not been racing. It's just more like you look at it and you almost dismiss it if it's bad because of all of the known things going against him. I would be very surprised if someone were to feel that way, especially other riders, because realistically, the other riders are going to test the bike themselves. So I don't know if they'd really take much from what Cairoli does. It's almost... I will admit that I think Matterly's result adds now more pressure on Cairoli's one-off appearances, because Trentino and Arnhem last year, it was very much R&D. He would go fast for a couple of laps and then start to drop back and either pull off or just limp to the finish. So therefore, expectations and excitement, which there was before his first GP in a couple of years, fell to the wayside. Now, because of Matterly, maybe people are going to start to believe again and think that we can have the very best Antonio Cairoli once more. I just think that, again, that was very track-induced, condition-induced in Great Britain. I think that Cairoli will do what Cairoli does. He'll probably have a great start, at least once, which will impress people because of the power of the Desmo 450. He'll be racing with a stock engine. I think he'll have a couple of great laps inside of the top 5, 6 at some point. And then whatever happens after that, I don't know, maybe he'll just drop back. But that's fine, because there will be moments where the potential is clear.
Yeah. Okay, so quickly, he's racing a stock engine. I've heard that like 50 times at this point. But is he not bringing all of his like aftermarket parts that he was using in Europe, the Akrapovic pipe and like all those other things with him? Like, this isn't just a like rolled off the showroom floor bike. No,
they're going to obviously have like pipe and all of that sort of stuff, like sponsor parts, but stock engine, and I don't think they're doing much to the suspension, Like, I think it's just whatever factory connection can do with the stock settings. Because it's also, if it was such a big deal and so results emphasized, then the MXGP team would probably be traveling with Tony, because they've worked with him at multiple races now and whatnot. But it's very much Cairoli dropping into the American R&D program because he's not working with the TLD team. He's working with Ziggy, who, as it stands right now, is not race team. He is R&D.
Yeah.
So I think you'll also see that in the pits. I don't know exactly what the pit setup will look like, but I don't think he's pitting out of the Troy Lee truck, which went to X amount of supercrosses and whatnot. I think it will be more discreet, which again plays to the storyline of we're here to test and gather data rather than we're here to show off and win.
Okay, so by the end of this, we should be not downplaying, but like, don't read into the results so much.
It's just cool. It's an experience.
Yeah, it's cool. It's exciting to see it, and it's also cool that it's not just. I don't want to say not just Lupino, because Lupino's a good rider, but the fact that it's Cairoli too is like also, adds some fanfare to it. It's nice to have him here. People were actually. He's a grand marshal this weekend at Southwick, and I feel like the crowd was kind of into that. Like, there was like chanting, and it was kind of a cool thing. So
yeah, that's why it works. Cairoli is so loved around the world, and I don't think there's anyone who really is against him. Even if you're not a fan of him, you're not against him. That he and Ducati almost get a free pass no matter how it goes. If it was someone else, I can't think of an example, but maybe there's more criticism and there's more of a desire to take a shot as soon as a sign of weakness is shown. But I don't think that's where we're at with Cairoli at all, especially 4.5 years past his full-time racing career.
Yeah. Well, He may be riding a stock Ducati, but you at home should not be left to ride a stock motorcycle. Check out Namura Technologies. They've been a trusted name in performance engine components for motocross, ATV, UTV, and personal watercraft for over 20 years. From complete rebuild to high-performance upgrades, Namura delivers precision-engineered parts built to perform under pressure. Their expanding lineup includes cast and forged pistons, connecting rods, gasket kits, engine valves, and cylinder kits, all designed to meet or exceed OEM specifications. And you'll be able to find a full product detail and application coverage at Namura.com. Thanks again for supporting the show, Namura. All right, second half of the show, Big Lou. We're a little bit long on time, but that's okay. I am enjoying these conversations. So what do you got for me?
Okay, well, I actually forgot that's how this show works. It's been a little while. Let's start with this. A lot of rumors about the MXGP AMA Combine going back 3 years now. It still exists. The concept exists. It's still being talked about. It's not been shelved completely. But could what Jorge Prado is going through almost push this idea away a little bit? Could it make everyone on both sides a little more hesitant to be like, either way you go, not a good look for one series, not a good look for one rider and team, not a good look for whatever, this one side. Almost it emphasizes that the scale is going to be weighted in one direction and you're not going to have a true race. Arguably, I realize that what I've just said could also apply to the Motocross of Nations.
Yeah. Here's what I think about this crossover thing, and what I truly think needs to happen, but probably won't because we got too much, I don't know, egos involved. I think what truly needs to happen is they're going to score this like separately to a degree, right? Like it's not like you're going to get AMA and MXGP points at the same time.
No, I was told, I mean, this is a while back now, but I was told they will be scored as one.
I think that's a mistake, and here's why. I think that to get the MXGP teams in and not worried about this Prado thing, you run the MXGP series with them on the gate and all that stuff like that at the same time as the AMA series, but you leave the rule book kind of separate and don't force the teams to run a production machine here this week, like whenever they come to do this race, because that would turn them all off. Like they're in the middle of testing and doing all this work on the bike mid-season and then have to race something completely different for one weekend and then go back into what they were doing, testing and everything like that. Well, I think that that's not a good way to approach this, you know?
From what I remember, I was told that you would just run, like the tech rules would apply to each series. So like MXGP guys can do what they do currently, and AMA guys can do what they do.
Well, then to answer your question, no, because I think that the MXGP guys believe with their setups and everything that they've learned about the machines over their years of testing are better at developing a machine than what's going on in the USA. And so I think that they would like to test that against the Americans on their own soil. And they just only have it at Redbud every 5th year and now Ironman this year that they can actually do that.
Yeah.
But every year would be cool too.
Yeah, and also I guess it would be a 2-day schedule and the MXGP schedule, so there's more time to figure things out, learn. I just wondered watching Prado, and I kind of thought of this before Southwick, but it still applies, if maybe some teams and riders would suddenly be like, yeah, this seems like a lose-lose for us. Because we're going to go there, we're going to be in their conditions, their heat, they're in the flow of this American thing, we're flying from wherever we are in the world. I just wondered if maybe it puts someone off and they're just like, yeah, no, it just doesn't. What can we gain from this?
Well, I think what they could gain from it, that they should all be looking at it as, is more of a global exposure thing where, okay, let's just say in the event that they actually do it and the first 5 years an American actually wins the race all 5 times, it still doesn't necessarily mean that like fans wouldn't be more interested in MXGP on a scale in the USA if you brought them here every year and put them on TV right in front of us. Like when they had the MXGP of the USA here, no one showed up to the race, so fans didn't watch it. And it's not like suddenly a lot of Americans got the MXGP TV pass. But if there's suddenly 300,000 people watching on Peacock MXGP for one weekend, I think that kind of adds more value to the series than they're probably giving credit for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. But
and so
the contrary to that is, do the riders and teams care?
They should.
Are they just looking at it from a competitive point of view?
No, they should care, because at the end of the day, as much as you want it to be a competitive point of view type of thing, it's still a marketing system for them as a manufacturer, as a brand, for the brands in Europe too. Like, think of all these, European brands that are trying to establish small footprints in the USA, whether it be gear brands or, parts or whatever, and suddenly one of your riders is able to get fastest qualifier or get on the box even or something like that, and their logos are suddenly on American television. That's, again, another plus. Like, I think that needs to be looked at as the main benefit of doing this, less so about what might happen in one weekend at a racetrack and more so about what sort of value you can add to the series itself.
It'd be good to get the nations on Peacock.
No, it definitely would.
I don't think that
Make
would
it a
ever
lot
happen,
easier.
though. Too much.
No.
Too many hoops to jump through. Too much for MXGP to lose, because obviously they must get a lot of money just from one-time payments for the nations each year. Can you imagine? I was trying to have a guess, but imagine.
Well, actually, how would that work with the MXGP USA crossover? Would MXGP TV also still have their own?
That's what I was told, but I think that's where we started to hit a hold up with this. The main thing that I was told was like, and again, this was a couple of years ago, but the main thing that I was told was more of a debate is, whose sponsor arches do you have? How do you work out track banners? How do all of that sort of stuff was a bit more, because obviously you're only working with a certain amount of space, and each contract says, you get this placement, and that kind of would all go out the window. For instance, it's not relevant now because there is no sponsor on the finish line in Pro Motocross, but Monster Energy have the finish in MXGP. Imagine if Motorsport had the finish in America. Like, how would you figure that out?
Right.
The fact that we've gone 3 years now and it's not really come to anything would make me think that it's not going to, but it still seems to exist in the ether, so I don't know. But yeah, I just, watching Prado, I just thought that maybe it would, if there's already doubts, and there obviously are doubts, concerns, because it would have happened by now if it was that straightforward, I just wondered if Prado almost puts more of a downer on it, or delays it a little more, or just adds another hurdle, because it's not a great selling point to the MXGP riders and teams.
I mean, you would know more about this than me, but I would have to imagine that most MXGP riders and teams still believe if you put Prado on his gas from 2024 in U.S. soil with time to learn the track, that he would not look anywhere near this bad. It's a combination of many different factors of why Prado's the way he is, but his old stomping grounds and something he's comfortable with would be miles different than this. So that's what teams should be, I feel like, hanging their hat on,
America, I've just had a medic bill come through and I have no idea what it's for or what it pertains to, but it's quite a lot of money. So that's great. Really.
I think you probably know what it's for.
Yeah, but I already paid when I was in the trauma center, which went from urgent care to ER, and they took me into the trauma center. I was laying there, out of it. And then a woman just appeared with a laptop and was like, card? And I was like, what? And she was like, she had a screen and she was like, yeah, this is you, $1,200. And I was like, yeah, whatever, just fuck off. But I thought that was me done. And now there's just randomly this.
Nope, there's always going to be bills later on. And honestly, the U.S. medical system is so fucked. I don't have time to get into how mentally challenged these people in the U.S. medical field are, personally, in my opinion. But it's really stupid.
It's not ideal.
Particularly in insurance. And I worked in insurance for a little bit, and I know how slimy they are. So,
yeah, it's not ideal. Anyway, that's great. Really put me.
Can I tell you about Partzilla for a second here? How about?
Can I help with this bill?
Maybe. I mean, if you go to Partzilla.com, they are the premier OEM parts dealer and distributor. So they might be able to generate some funds for you. We might have a Big Lou courtesy counter on the side. But they sell OEM parts for Honda, Kawasaki, Polaris, Can-Am, Suzuki, Arctic, Sea-Doo, Ski-Doo, and Yamaha motorcycles, ATVs, PWCs, and snowmobiles. Visit Partzilla.com to see their extensive line of parts and accessories. Only a 2-rider team this weekend under the Partzilla Blaster Power PRMX tent. Mitchell Harrison 19th, Jack Chambers 24th. Cade Clayson had many thoughts about Jack Chambers last week. I don't know that we really need to get into that anymore, but yeah, we're trying to find signs of life.
Jack Chambers is a good rider.
It's a great rider.
That's all I've got.
Better than this. That's
all I've got. I don't know what more can be said because he is a good rider. Similar to Prado. Prado's a good rider. And we just wait for that to show itself. Although it did with Prado at the weekend. And Chambers has had some signs of life.
He didn't have to go to the Consi this week.
Yep. And that's where we're at. No, 24-23 isn't the end of the world.
He's better than that.
He is better than that, but that isn't diabolical. That's not.
Yeah.
It's been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, would you like me to go on?
I would like you to go on.
Okay. This kind of went under the radar quite a lot a couple of weeks ago, but Levi Kitchen obviously signed a 2-year extension at Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki. Thoughts? That seems like a long time in the 250 class. I mean, I expected him to stay down, but I was thinking maybe a 1-year deal, and like to commit to the 250 class this long term again. I don't know. This is his 4th full year in 250s, so he'll be at 6 by the time that new deal is done. And I feel like he's a bigger guy, so I would almost feel like he would maybe be better on a 450, or there would be a sense of urgency to get there. I don't know.
Yeah, my thoughts, and this will have to go back probably like 8 shows now or something like that, but I really genuinely believe Levi should be on a 450 next year. Like, I think that we've seen what he's capable of. Could he win a 250 title? Yeah, cool. Great. But he's going to be good on a 450, and he's going to be the next, or he should have been the next generation for Kawasaki. He's obviously not in the plans for the next few years now, because Prado's going to have 2 more years beyond this, and probably that Chase Sexton guy is going to also have 2 more years. So Kitchen's just waiting for those 2 years to be done to maybe then be Kawasaki's prodigal in the 450 class. But I just think he should be there sooner rather than later. And I guess maybe jumping manufacturers to do it would be a bad decision, but I don't know that he has like a lot to prove in the 250 class. He's won races. He's been a title contender. Has he won? No, he hasn't won the title yet, but he's going to be okay on a 450. So let's go ahead and make it happen.
Yeah, like although he hasn't won a title yet, he has proven without doubt that he could have won a title by now, which in my mind is good enough. From the perspective of long-term prospects, winning a title is not going to change that because we all know that he is capable of that. So therefore, he would get the opportunities, the respect, the money. Now, admittedly, had he shopped around for a 450 deal for next year, I can't think of any real option other than, I mean, maybe he could have made a play to take Malcolm's spot, although I don't think so because Rockstar are so invested in Malcolm. Maybe he could have made a play to go to Triumph, although I don't think so because that's all a little bit non-committal, you could say. Yeah, so realistically, what other options were there? So I guess there's that, which kind of puts a pin in this quite aggressively. But still,
yeah.
I just feel like if I look at it and think the Levi Kitchen is going to spend another 2 years in 250s, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I had heard KTM was interested. I don't know if they ever got close, but to me that seems like a good possible fit to do 1 down, 1 up. If that makes sense, like 26 on a 250, 27 on a 450 to have gone to KTM, and he chose to stay at PC. That's fine, but like I think that would have fit. I think there's a couple options he could have considered, but I do agree that a brand change and trying to make that work and all that stuff was probably not the right move. So I think at the end of the day, he maybe ended up taking the best deal for him, but I still just would have preferred to see him on a 450, like 2027 at the latest.
Yes, I would 100% agree because I do genuinely believe he will be good on a 450. And yeah, again, 6 years in 250s just seems like a lot for someone of that talent. But again, victim of circumstance, because realistically there wasn't a clear pathway, and at that point, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're at the point really where we've talked about this like 100 times, but the crossover of Barcia, Anderson, now Tomac as well, but Tomac I think is kind of broken free from this a little bit, and Malcolm. These guys all still being here is, I hate saying this, but it's like hurting the up and comers.
Yeah,
because there should be 4 available seats basically with those guys not there that we can see. Kitchen and Shimoda and who else, on a 450 already. And we haven't seen that yet because those guys are still here and they still deserve a look at for a contract because they're talented and they can win races and they're close. But better than what Levi Kitchen might bring to the table over the next 5 years. Like these guys, these teams, I think are really, they should have taken a harder look at that as a potential,
Yeah, but then ultimately someone like Levi isn't going to go anywhere. Because he can't. So, yeah, we'll just talk to him in 2 years' time when these guys will probably then be retiring, I would imagine.
True, yeah.
Although I've said that for years now, but it definitely has caused a bit of a backlog, a bit of a delay in some riders' careers. But then maybe this is a knock-on effect and therefore Kitchen will be around for a couple of years longer because he won't be as burnt out on 450 life and whatnot.
I just feel, though, that you look at Hunter Lawrence, and it's a little different for him, but Justin Cooper and now RJ Hampshire, to me, are proof in the pudding that the top of the 250 class is right behind the top of the 450 class. You know what I mean? And Levi should be right about where J Coop is, and J Coop is really damn good on a 450. Like, I don't think he got anywhere near that respect or credit before he stepped onto a 450 that he would do what he's doing right now. But I think most people agree that Levi will do that. So, again, do you want to keep taking the chances and not having that on your team? That's why I think teams should be strategically thinking a little bit more 2027, 2028 than just what's available right now,
Yeah, I mean, and it makes it harder because we don't actually know when Tomac, Anderson, Barcia, Mookie plan to step aside. So that makes it harder for guys like Kitchen to really plan around stuff, and yeah, I guess ultimately if you are Kitchen, Shimoda, anyone who's kind of been around the 250 class for 4 or 5 years now, you don't have much choice but to just wait it out and get that championship, get that bonus while you can to kill time, essentially. But it does just, overarching point, understanding that there aren't many options and that's all limited, overarching feeling is that's a long time in the 250 class for Levi Kitchen.
Let's do this case study because I agree with you. So he's on PC for the next 2 years. Let's just assume he opts to coast Hayden next year, so he won't be on the same class. Then Hayden moves up to a 450. So Levi races the next 4 championships on a 250 without Hayden Deegan there. How many titles does he win?
Both. Well, I don't know, because then you got Cole Davies, you got 1 Supercross. I don't know about outdoors. Although he's been good, I still don't feel as though I have as much conviction as I do with thinking he'd be a Supercross champion. Like, I still feel hesitant. Although I can't, off the top of my head, name someone who will outright beat him, especially with Deegan and Vial gone. It's actually quite interesting to think how different 250 outdoors will look next year. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be a Kitchen, Shimoda, Davies battle? Pierce Brown? Like, seems like a very big departure from where we are at the moment.
I like that Max Anstey you just went right over the top of him too.
That's fine. I don't need to say Max Anstey. Yeah, that's really weird to think that things are going to change. Although nothing is changing in the sense of, or you could argue that although not as much is changing as it should with the likes of Kitchen and whatnot, even just losing those 2 riders, the 250 class is going to look very, very different next year. Huh. Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's kind of rocked me a little bit. Do you need to do a sponsor read before we go on to the final topic?
No, we've loved our sponsors a lot today, so okay. I think we can go right into the last one.
Sad that we don't have that many sponsors that we have to slot them in at every opportunity possible. If you want me to do a non-moto, I don't really have an answer to this, but for some reason it's in my notes. I don't even know when I wrote this in my notes. I think I stole it from somewhere. If your life was a movie, what would the audience be screaming at the TV? Deep.
As in, like, they're angry about something kind of
No,
thing?
you know, like when you're like rooting for a character and you're like, no, don't do that. Oh, no, wrong decision. Ah.
I mean, because my Twitter mentions are this way anyway, probably everyone telling me not to leave Racer X would be what people would be yelling at the TV screen.
Wait, when did your Twitter... Why have people been saying that to you on Twitter? Recently?
I mean, when I left Racer... Well, no, like the whole year after I left Racer X, that was that was what people were saying. And still say to this day, actually, to be honest, in YouTube comments.
Well, I mean, let's deep dive this. Do you feel that way?
I don't really want to deep dive that, to be
okay.
honest.
Sad.
I'm just telling you that that's what people say to me. So,
I don't know, because are they watching at what point in the Lewis series are they at? Because right now, there's not much to watch. It'd be quite boring TV. So if I'm trying to think of a moment in life where they would be screaming.
do you think that, like, with hindsight available to them, they would, like, somehow try to pull you away from interviewing Eli Tomac at St. Louis?
No, because I think
In
that's worked out
2024?
well. I can still interview. Me and Eli still do great interviews. All of the people that were mad at me are no longer mad at me. I think with the benefit of hindsight, as you just said, I've become less of a villain of that situation.
So,
And more of a goofy, hapless idiot who just messed up.
then the other thing would be, in hindsight as well, David Luongo would just be, like, pulling you away from the French Grand Prix starting line.
Yeah, the same thing.
Yeah.
I was with hindsight, I think I've come out of that quite well and proven to be just the lovable goof that was in a situation that he probably just shouldn't have been in, but was just there. I'd imagine the audience would have just gasped when I got that medical bill through. There probably would have been an element of shock horror. That probably would have been a cliffhanger, to be honest. I'd imagine the episode ends on me picking up my phone and seeing that. Again, not the most thrilling TV series, but it would. The next episode will open. It'll be an hour of me having a meeting with my accountant. I'm trying to think. I mean, I can think of one thing that I can't really say, which is terrible podcasting. I think right now they would be screaming at the TV, fucking sort yourself out. Or give up. Just do something. Like that meme of the guy with a stick. That would be them with me. Just do something. Like fucking shit or get off the pot. Would be the audience's reaction to me at the moment. So that would be them screaming. Yeah,
I feel like given, I was going to
it's
say, I
harder
feel
for
like
me because I'm so stuck. I'm so stuck, like visa wise and stuff. But like, my life doesn't have as many freedoms as yours does. You know?
yeah.
Like I'm just kind of locked in. Like I can't really do much because I'm at the power of the government.
No, I think what would actually happen for both of us, given the current status of everything that's going on in this stupid sport, is they would be telling us, no, do not go interview 12 people in the pits. Go to the press conference, please.
Do we want to discuss this? Should we do this? I mean, we're only at an hour, so we can do a couple of minutes on this.
I don't want to. I did this
I think
last
I
week
do.
with Cade.
Wait, you discussed this with Cade?
A little bit, yeah.
I don't remember that. I mean, I didn't listen to it all, but I skipped the topics.
Well, we just discussed the back and forth that Steve and
the first
all
week,
that
yeah.
stuff happened. Yeah. So
I'll admit right now. Well, yeah, I can be completely honest about it. How it is personally for me. On one side, I think it's the same for you, and one side certainly isn't. I've always really struggled with public speaking. School plays and the like have been my biggest nightmare. And for whatever reason, I can go on Race Day Live and be fine with zero concerns. But for some reason, the press conference has always proven to be my bugaboo. And the concept of grabbing the mic and everyone staring as I say Lewis, and everyone goes, for some reason has spooked me to this day. And it's something that I'm really working to try and get over because It's kind of like the last thing that I need to overcome in my career. What would you say? Career, not setbacks, fears. Maybe I don't know what you'd say. Phobias, career phobias. Because, like, as I've said before, I was so shy growing up that there's a lot of people who know me from when I was like young who can't believe that I do podcasts and can't believe that I walk up to Jeffrey Hurling. Well, I don't do that anymore. Can't believe that I walk up to Chase Sexton and talk to him because, you know, like that was even a process for me, was just like getting the confidence to talk to people and do all of that. And this is like the last little one. Secondary, which I think you would agree with, and I think it's fine for me to say, if I didn't do post-race interviews and instead sat in the press conference, I don't think Vital would pay for me to go to the races, and I don't even know if I'd have a job. So even if I really wanted to be the best press conferencer ever, which I do understand that there's a benefit of, there's people who watch the press conferences who don't listen to this and don't listen to Pulp and don't listen to any other podcast, and you can really shine in a very non-competitive field because there aren't many media in there. And if you ask the best questions and be the best version of you, you could do wonders for your career. I understand that, but that aside, the post-race interviews are important, and there's I follow MotoGP media and F1 media. I don't follow the sports, but I keep an eye on how the media operates. And similar there are people who choose to go to the press conference and people who choose to go to the scrum, depending on situation. And equally, I do still very much believe that the conversations that come from the pits are much better than the ones at the press conference. I think that personally, my strength as an interviewer is my follow-up. Not so much my first question, it's what I do with that information and how I build on the conversation, which you can't do in a press conference because you ask the question and then it ends. There's a lot more ins and outs than people realize. And I did have something else to say on the matter something more controversial that I wanted to tackle, but it's just left me. Something about this, but it's left me.
I didn't think about it for a second, but yeah, I mean, to echo what you said, it's the literally exact same situation for me. If I only went to the press conference after the race, I wouldn't have a job. Definitely not with Swap. Maybe not with anybody else, because I am literally paid to go around the pits and interview everybody else that I can find. And MX Sports has now tried to make that very difficult to the point where they're telling teams to turn us away.
Yeah, but that's okay. So I haven't been there for 2 weeks, but has that been happening? No.
Not really. But I have seen the team PR people kind of not be stoked that we're around.
I had that at Thunder Valley with because as you know, I ended up doing the interview at the truck. It was, but the team in question said, we're not meant to do that, but if a rider's fine with it, I guess you can, but I don't want to be involved because I've been told that we can't facilitate that. But yeah, it's an ongoing debate in the sport about the best way to handle that, because yes, the press conference is important, equally to us, as for the reasons I mentioned, as the riders and the series, but equally post-race interviews are important. Because in a situation like we're in at the moment, Jett and Deegan are hogging the podium so much, and similarly, Hunter and Eli are up there more often than not. So do you just never talk to Jacob? Do you never talk to AP? Do you never talk to etc.?
That's what the people want. That's what they want, bro.
And for instance,
seriously,
Cairoli's not going to podium this weekend, but that's going to be a very good interview after the race. And
let's just, you know what? Let's just not talk to him. Like, maybe as media people, we should just let the people have what they want, which is nobody outside of the top three ever gets spoken to.
There's a very high chance that Chase isn't on the podium this weekend, first race back, but that's going to be a very attractive interview versus talking to Hunter for the 6th week in succession, because it's going to be new and exciting. There's a lot, and also a bigger problem with this is the culture of this sport, which is very much checkered flags out, see ya. In other sports, it works because it's not as rushed, because it's the culture, and I don't like it because I was thinking about this earlier for another reason. For instance, in MXGP, everyone's around till like 1 a.m. on Sunday night. Like, the press tent, people are still working. The pits, there's still people around. Very rarely there are instances, like Hurlings likes to get an early flight, and Lommel, for instance, when everyone lives just 2 seconds away, they leave quite quickly. But for the most part, the experience is all more lived. Whereas in America, it's very much turn up, race, checkered flags out, see ya. Which it doesn't work for the professional goings on that exist around the racing. And it creates situations like this where it's very rushed, Supercross is a different kettle of fish because obviously you finish so late that what do you expect? That's kind of just built into the fabric of the series. But outdoors, it's all just a bit like rushed, and I don't know.
Yeah, I can take people right into what just happened with me at Southwick, right? So again, I'm trying to play both sides of this coin, and I'm trying to go to the press conferences when I can. I asked 3 questions in the 450 press conference this weekend, but I glanced through the comments and it was just a bunch of bullshit of people saying, well, Hopper and Gypsy aren't there, so the best people in the sport really aren't there, which, whatever, man, you can have that opinion. But for me, as you said, all these guys leave right away, and 450s went first this weekend. And so the 450 guys are even worse for this, where they just bugger off and they just go to their either a motorhome or just peace off immediately. So I was down taking photos because that's also part of my job. I'm also paid to be there to take photos for Swap Moto. I was taking photos of Hayden Deegan raising his trophy and the #1 plate and getting showered in champagne while Steve is texting me asking where Harry Koulos' truck is so that he could go interview him because Steve was already in the pits doing interviews. So then I ran up the hill, full sprint, to try to catch anybody that was still in the pits before the press conference started. Lo and behold, all the 450 guys were gone, and the 250 guys were undressing still, so I didn't want to talk to any of them because they would have been annoyed that they're covered in sand and hot, and I'm over here with a microphone trying to interview them. So then I went back up to the media tent, uploaded all my photos that I could to Swap, then sat down for 15 minutes in the press conference, asked 3 questions, picked up my camera, and ran back out. And I was still able to get 8 guys, which thank God there were still people around. But that's how rushed it is. It's not, as you said, this process where everyone's hanging out afterwards and it's chill and all this stuff like that. And in Steve's position, he's always had that freedom of just immediately going to the pits and doing all the interviews that he can get. Whereas me, I'm trying to do both sides of it a little bit, and it's not really working. I should have just told the press conference and Brandon Short at MX Sports, no, man, fuck off. I'm getting paid to go do this other job. And I'm helping you for no good reason at this point. So maybe that's what we just got to do.
That's maybe a bit aggressive, but I would also argue trying to think of how to word this without completely shooting myself in the foot. The press conference is also there. I think that all of the people who are talking about the press conference, I think there's a misunderstanding of what a press conference is actually for, because there's all this talk about asking questions and stuff, but no one's doing anything with these questions they're asking. The reason you're asking a question in a press conference is to take that soundbite and turn it into an article, a feature. But all of these people, I'm not seeing the content from the press conference be used in any sort of way, shape, or form. It's more of just an ego boost to sit in a press conference and be like, yeah, I asked a question. Sweet, job done.
I'll fight back on that because I know that the series, which obviously we know which media company helps with the series, they clip that and they turn it into stuff that runs.
The people who are the press conference heroes, you think they're in there because they want to help the series? No. We're all in there.
Not necessarily, but Hopper's in there taking videos of himself asking the questions and then using it. And when Gypsy goes to the press conference, he has a video guy there filming him ask the question that he then uses and uploads as his own content. Is it generating a narrative from it? No, because he's not writing stories and using it as quotes. He's just using it as content for building his own platform, which, yeah, okay, you could argue we could do too, no problem. But that's not what the point of us getting extended viewpoints from the paddock is for. We're trying to get a synopsis of the race as a whole, not just what happened to the top 3.
Yeah, I'm thinking that no one would have talked to Mikkel Harrop through 5 rounds, which is a fascinating story. New to America, what do you think? No one would have talked to Jorge Prado, arguably the best interviews to come from 2025 outdoors, or the most interesting at least. No one would have talked to Guillo, who's becoming a bit of a fan favorite just because of the things he says and the openness in which he talks. There's got to be a happy medium, and if there was a happy medium of, hey, there will be riders at the scrum after the press conference, so do the press conference and then walk over to the scrum, happy days. But the teams and riders don't work with that. So therefore, everyone else is running around like a headless chicken. It's no one's fault. It's
How many people were at the scrum this weekend, you think, Lewis?
I'm going to go 4.
Close. 3.
Oh. Well, I saw
3
Prado.
people.
I saw Prado was there. Guido was there?
Guido was there because LeBig pulled him over there.
Oh, okay.
Moseman was there because Yamaha brought him. Or maybe he walked up by himself. I don't actually know. But
I
he
feel
was
like
there.
Moseman's very keen for interviews this year, so I think
And
he's...
Jace Kessler. Dirt Bike Depot's Jace Kessler was also there.
Yeah, so that's
3
difficult.
people.
So yeah, like I don't know what... It's imagine, again, if you presented this to MotoGP F1 and you know the comments are going to go, oh, we're not those sports, but it's for comparison. Like, I don't know any others. Imagine if you showed those people... Well, we saw it. Birmingham. You were in Birmingham? Yeah, you were. Adam Wheeler stood in the pits watching me and you talk to him and then go, oh, there's Mookie. Oh, there's... And he looked at us and went, you do this every week. You just run around like headless chickens wondering if you're going to be able to talk to a rider. And we were like, yep. And he literally shook his head and went, there's no way I would do this. This is ridiculous. So like it's not like we are loving what we do. It's pain in the arse. And it's horrible to fly wherever in the world and spend X amount of money and not know if you're even going to get an interview that's worth a damn. Because we've both had experiences, and I've had them in MXGP and America, where such slim pickings at the end of the day that I have 5 interviews that realistically I know no one gives a shit about, and I just did them purely for the sake of the fact I needed some sort of content. Equally, and it's like I fully support the press conference. I genuinely do, and I fully understand the need for it and how it can be beneficial to us. I fully see both sides. I really genuinely do.
Yeah, me too.
I also just can't split myself to go 2 sides. But equally, equally, I would love to take the press conference quotes and turn them into stories and make a bit more like, again, F1 MotoGP coverage. But that's not the culture in this sport, again, because of the reaction of a reaction to content. Almost like I keep seeing, I guess the new narrative is, that's attached to the old school. It's like, well, no. The old school doesn't exist, nor does the new school. The best way to construct a media outlet is to have it all. Articles, photos, videos, podcasts, TikToks, YouTube shorts. In my mind, that's the best. There is no old school and new school. There's a room for everything. There's room for absolutely everything if you can do it all. So I don't like that, for one. That's a weird fucking take. But also that's the take that people have when they don't have the ability to do one or the other. If I was just good at doing photography, then yeah, I'd sit here and tell you that photography is the best thing in the world and everything else is stupid. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird old kettle of fish. But also, I'll tell you what's weird about this sport, and I've had a lot of time to think lately, Kellen. Helped by the fentanyl. Really opened my mind to different possibilities in the world. Fucking bizarre how in this sport, and I've said this before, I think, why the hell are we, as media, such fucking personalities and yardsticks and discussion points? That's so bizarre, because it doesn't happen in any other sport, I feel. Like, you don't go in the... No, okay, I know what you're going to say, like NFL and stuff, like the personalities. But my point being, you go in the comments on these podcasts, and it's not... I've said this, I know I've said this before, because I feel like I'm repeating myself. It's not... Interesting point about Levi Kitchen. I personally think he should stay down in the 250s, because he can make X amount of money, and he can do this. Like, it's not, I want to talk about the racing. It's... I don't know why this guy's talking about motocross. I don't fucking think he should be talking. I don't fucking care. It's like, well, what's that? Like, what? First of all, you're watching it, you fucking idiot. Also, speaking of fucking idiots, let's do a new segment. YouTube Dumbass of the Week. We're open to sponsors for this segment. YouTube Dumbass of the Week. Now, this comment comes from the Vital MX podcast that I did yesterday, which is sponsored proudly by Yamaha Motor USA. Thank you to them. It's the Vital MX post-race show. It's on YouTube. Organically, I don't have a read for Yamaha Motor USA, so I just throw it in organically, you know? Just whip that pancake, throw it in. And on that podcast, I threw it in with Deegan. Similar to us, we were talking about how amazing Deegan is, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I have no doubts about Deegan. Equally, I have no doubts about his 250 and all the amazing work that Yamaha have done. I mean, look at his starts. He started first in the last 4 motos. Speaks to the amazingness of Yamaha and all they're doing, quite clearly. And also, it's like said in the podcast multiple times, sponsored by Yamaha. So it's quite clear where I'm going with this. Comment that happened just before this podcast start. Quoting, this is from a commenter called Lazy Hefe, which admittedly on brand because clearly not putting much thought into his comments. If he wanted to be completely on the nose, he'd change his name to Lazy Dumbass Hefe, but then again, probably too much effort to type that. Lazy. Comment. Quotations. It's a testament to all that Yamaha have done with Hayden's 250. What an absolute insane thing to say. Take any and all credit away from Deegan. Apparently it's a bike. And then he goes on to again, similar to what I just said, goes on to insult me, my looks, my accent, my voice, etc., etc. Dumbass. That's your YouTube Dumbass of the Week. Thanks for coming out. Remember to get involved in the comments below this episode because you too could be the YouTube Dumbass of next week. It's possible.
I am going to continue with my ideology.
But no, going back to where I started with that. No, going back to where I started with that. It is insane that so many of the comments are focusing on the hosts of these podcasts and media people rather than just like, hey, I also want to discuss Jett and whether he can be beaten. Hey, I also want to discuss whether Prado's going to figure this out. Hey, I also want to, it's weird. Yeah. I think it's weird. Because whether you disagree or agree, I would think you want to get involved in the debate rather than ignore the debate and debate the person who's doing the debate.
Yep. I'm pretty much ready to just stop talking about media in this sport in general because I think, you know what? It's pretty clear to me that nobody actually wants real coverage. They just want fun questions only.
Fun.
Yep. Because go look at the comments on the press conference this weekend. What do you think most people wanted to know more about?
I actually don't know. I haven't looked at the comments. I have no idea. What?
The first minute of the press conference, as happens often with these press conferences, there's hot mics playing. Yep. And Eli Tomac is telling Jett Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence about a bull that had gotten loose on his property and almost killed his wife, I guess, by running her over. And they were all laughing and having a good time. And then when we got into the actual journalistic stuff, discussing the race, Hunter Lawrence's starts, nope, those questions fucking suck. Let's go back to talking about Eli Tomac's wife getting ran over by a bull.
You could say that's a load of bull. Anyway, yeah, but this is also the point of why the interviews at the scrum and in the pits are interesting because similar to our discussion to start this podcast, I'm at the point now where I don't know what to ask you, Jett, because, hey, great day, great starts, great lap times, great riding. Tell me about it. And I think that's the same in any sport. Like you get to when there's domination, you get to a point where you're like, yeah, you did it again. Congrats. Whereas the nitty gritty of some of the other stories with disappointments, like Prado again, for instance, the second that Prado starts reeling off wins, the amount of Prado interviews are going to minimize quite rapidly. But for now, it's so fascinating and everyone wants to like assess his progress week on week and how much progress there is and blah, blah, blah. But you're not getting that in a press conference, which is why, and we've discussed this with the Supercross folks a lot, and they agree, but it's just how do you facilitate it? Again, timing, facilities, stadium, pits, etc., athletes, teams. An F1 MotoGP style scrum would also be beneficial for them but I don't know how we as a collective, as a sport, don't know how you make that happen. That's where the confusion is. So, yeah. But it comes down to everyone. It's like we're all at fault. Me and you are at fault, without doubt. The teams are at fault. The riders are at fault because ultimately we are such a bare bones sport that the teams and riders are just going racing and then going home. The media commitments aren't really exist. They don't really exist, and there's not really much weight put into them, which is where this all falls down, essentially. Yep. And even the press conference, the riders turn up every week, but there's been instances where a rider has a flight to catch, so they're not in a press conference.
Or they're not paying attention at all to anything that's being asked or going on in the press conference or nothing, you know?
It it all could be better, including us.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we're right or perfect or whatever, and I fully agree that we should be in the press conference. You know, like you, me, Steve, whoever the journalists are there should be in the press conference. But as it currently stands, it is unfacilitatable for our jobs to be completed while also attending the press conference, which is why we are not there. It's not like we are like actively saying this is dumb, we don't want to be there. Maybe Steve is, I don't know. But we should be there, and we could be there if it worked at the teams meeting us halfway and also giving us riders that tell a bigger story than just the podium. But they don't.
Yeah, like I mean, this is a tiny fix, and it isn't going to fix everything. But I've thought for a while, like they need to cut down the length for the press conferences, because then that would at least move us into the pits quicker, and then maybe we have more riders. Because the press conferences are maybe not so much outdoors, but Supercross, like it's like 15, 20 minutes a class. That's quite long for just 3 riders.
This weekend was 25 total, I think. So yeah,
so that's a little less. But in Supercross, often it's like 35, 40 minutes all in. I don't know. It is a curious thing, and like I admit, I 100% agree that it all needs to be better, and like I need to be better, and there's a lot more that I would like to do. It's part of the reason why I ended up in hospital, because I kind of drive myself insane with this shit. But it's just like ultimately we're working around many different things and many different goals and many different ambitions, and no one really knows how to get everyone on the same page, and understandably, because I also can't figure that out. Nor can anyone. So, I don't know. No hate comms. Just be kind. Love each other. And, yeah.
All right. And don't die. Just make it through the ICU and get back to the racetrack soon, which you will be doing this weekend.
Yes.
Triumphant return.
I'm actually quite nervous, to be honest.
Why?
Well, like, this is only the 3rd podcast I've done. Like I said, I did the Vital podcast yesterday. It's quite hard. Like afterwards, I felt really like dizzy and faint, and like even my throat's starting to hurt again. So like I don't know if might be a bad idea.
My word of advice, literally to you, is do not walk around Redbud much.
Yeah,
like,
no, I don't think I'm going to
go to pit lane and go to the media tent. Like,
yeah, I'm not going to. I can't afford to now.
Yeah, but I'm glad you're back. I'm glad we were able to see you on the podcast again. We returned with a quite long one, which is
really
maybe why you're exhausted.
I feel like I've really returned with a podcast that's going to bring a lot of positive comments. I feel like
it's going to be great.
The 3% percentage that I started with might have to lessen that number down to 1.5%.
It's all right. They probably hate all of us and assume or wish that we're not in the sport by next year. So congratulations.
Well, maybe we won't
get a wish.
be.
Yep.
Lots of opportunities out there. I really, really, and I've said this for years, and I don't know, it probably never happened because it costs money and logistics and access. I just really want to go to like MotoGP as a media person and just almost like take notes on how it all works, mainly because we could learn stuff, but also I'm just fascinated to see how it works with a different structure and a different, more commitments.
Do it.
Well,
why not do it?
Well, like you'd have to pay to go to a race, wouldn't you? Like I'd still have to pay flight, hotel.
Stay with Wheeler. Pay a flight and just stay with Wheeler. Yeah, I know. Like that, you have to pay a flight, but
Kellen, this bill I've just got may put me back in MXGP. So,
yeah. Apologies for our dumb system.
There will be a GoFundMe in the comments.
Okay. Yep.
Pulp MX gives back, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Are we done?
Yeah,
are we done?
Sure.
Thanks to Leatt, Race Tech Namura, Partzilla for backing the show. A wild return by our man Lewis Phillips, and
Wait,
yeah,
really?
we'll be back after. Well, I mean, it's a long ass show, dude. It was almost an hour and a half. Like,
if you're saying wild because of the length, then fine. I thought you were saying wild because of the content.
No, the content I thought was great until about 20 minutes ago.
Wait, was the ending bad? Did we take it too far?
No, it's fine. No, I think that I'm okay with being this transparent about it because I think that the people need to understand what's going on instead of just listening to what has happened the last 2 weeks and firing blanks back at us. But, whatever.
I can end on one more if you want.
Make it quick.
Could argue that to have a comment on the matter, you should probably go to more than like 4 races a year. See you next week.
Touching that. I'm not touching that with a
See you
10-foot
next
pole,
week.
but we will see you next week to recap Redbud and so much more. Thanks for tuning in to another Leatt LVK More Than Moto podcast. See you guys.